Tetra's now our podcast producer. She's sitting in Jeff's chair.
All right, let's get this going.
Okay. Tetra, you need to count us down.
Meow, 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 meow.
You're really bad at your job, Tetra.
Hello, and welcome to Tudor, I Hardly Know Her.
This is the cat edition.
Meow, 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 meow.
Meow, meow, meow. Meow, meow, meow. Meow, 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 meow. Meow, 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 meow.
Hi, my name is Garrett.
And I'm Emily.
Meow, meow.
And that's Tetra.
That was Jeff. But he got me good.
Jeff's not a cat.
You took my kidneys.
Oh, you took my kidneys. Good to hear you guys.
Yeah.
Jeff, haven't talked to you in 2 weeks.
I know. It's been weird, awkward silence around the house lately.
Jeff and I don't talk unless we're on the podcast, guys.
Mm-hmm.
The podcast is our life.
That'd be really weird.
Speaking of the podcast being our life, I know I'm late in replying to a bunch of Facebook messages.
Well, we also got like tons of them in the last 2 weeks for some reason.
We have.
Yeah, what happened? How are you all finding our podcast now?
No,
I'm
I
not
love
complaining about it. Just how is this happening?
See, last time I checked,
Love
we're
it.
like 8 away from being 500 likes on Facebook now.
I love it. I'm so impressed with that. But just so you guys know, I do see your messages and I plan on responding to them. It's just we've been really busy with trying to put our house together so that the baby can sleep on something other than a drum set.
I still don't understand the problem with that.
I can reply in Emily's stead, but you probably won't get anything substantial out of it.
It'll just be Garrett saying, "That's so cool.
Wow, very interesting.
Very fascinating." We love hearing from you, though. And
I just send a bunch of memes.
I plan on going through the messages and replying to a whole bunch of them. The problem is a lot of the messages also have requests, which I genuinely appreciate, but it's stuff like, do you have book recommendations? And I put I can't just throw out book names. I actually have to look at my list and look at my bookshelf and then look at my reviews and see what I would actually recommend based on what you've told me. So I promise I'm giving each of your messages a thoughtful response. I just wanted to let y'all know they're coming. It's gonna happen.
We care. Don't worry.
It's going to happen, Captain. That's it for me.
All right.
Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. Goodbye. Oh, yeah. We still have to do the
Emily.
show part.
Emily.
Garrett.
I've been waiting with bated breath. What in the hell are we talking about today?
Okay, today's subject was inspired by a new Tudor book I'm reading called The Private Lives of Tudors. And we are going to talk about the servants of the Tudor courts.
How have we not gotten to this yet?
Well, we've kind of touched on it in a variety of topics. So especially when we were talking about like clothing, we touched on some of what the servants do.
Yeah, we were talking about like when we're talking about in the subject, we talk about the ones who are involved and with that said area.
Yeah. So today we're actually
like
going to
Piss
talk.
Boy.
Like what?
Like the Piss Boy.
I thought you said Fist Boy, and I'm like, ugh.
Both
Yes, 'cause
sound
Piss Boy
like
is so much better.
horrible superheroes.
Yeah.
I'd rather be the Piss Boy than the Fist Boy.
Or the one who wiped the king's ass.
That's the groom of the stool. They had very literal names.
I mean,
I'm
they
Piss
weren't very
Boy,
creative back then.
And I'm Stool Lad.
Away!
Piss Boy and Stool Lad to the rescue.
Wiping
These are
away
all names that I
evil.
was called back
Here
in grade school.
To wipe the king's ass of sin. Because they thought it was holy and shit. Huh?
Anyway.
Anyway, today that's what we're going to talk about. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
Are you prepared?
Yes.
I guess.
Okay.
Are you afraid of the dark?
Okay. So, let me find. I did half my notes yesterday and half of them today. Okay, so it's important to remember that basically everybody was a servant of the king and the queen. It didn't matter if you were a duke or a duchess. It didn't matter if you were the king's sibling. I mean, things were better for you if you were a high-ranking courtier, but you were still serving the king. And actually, it was a privilege back then to do so. So we already talked about the queen's ladies. I believe we had an episode about that.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the daughters of the influential men. They were other notable women at court, and they were the queen's buddies, but they also helped her get ready and comb her hair and get her ready for bed and sew with her and all that stuff. And then the king has his posse, his gang,
His entourage.
Yeah. There was Turtle.
There was Drama.
There's Drama.
And then the other guy. Ari.
He was Ari would have been Woolsey.
You guys know way more about Entourage than anybody should.
Which is weird because
I agree.
Because I watched that show
in college.
It's like 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was like 10 years ago.
And I've never ever watched an episode since.
And yet it's come twice in the last week.
Yeah. Really burned in my skull, sadly.
Yeah, apparently. So I just remember he had a really pretty girlfriend. So the king had his privy chamber. And during Henry VII's time, that was only really a handful of men. But that's because Henry VII was all about his privacy. He was like, no, go away. Leave me alone. Henry VIII, less so. He was all like, let's hang out with everybody. And he had about 50 men in his privy chamber.
Scandalous.
No, I'm a liar. He did have about 50 men hanging out with him, but 12 of them were from the privy chamber.
We're just a bunch of guys hanging around. What's wrong with that?
Doing guy stuff, like wiping the king's ass.
Like wiping each other's ass. Yeah.
So there was the groom of the stool, and we're going to talk about him, of course. I know we have before, but let's bring him up again because we can never stop talking about the butt wiper. So he was attending the king wherever he went because the king always had to poop, and he always needed his butt wiped. He was also his messenger.
Remember, kids, this is real.
It is
My
so
least
real.
favorite night is burrito night.
So Henry VIII actually got super constipated later.
It's just Woodhouse from Archer.
Yes, sir.
So Henry VIII got really constipated near the end of his reign, like after 15.
This sounds like you're saying a bit, but I don't think you are.
I'm not. I swear to God, he just couldn't poop. And
Well-documented constipation.
They would give him.
Yeah,
enemas.
I was gonna say, like, who's documenting the fact that the king couldn't shit today?
Oh, it's the Constipation Proclamation.
It was
God damn it!
the Daily Bulletin, the Constipation Proclamation. Okay, so this is why we actually know this much about them. The king had a quote-unquote private life, but he didn't because he was the body of the state, and the country was kind of entitled to know if he was healthy or not. So the court would know what was going on. They would try and keep it quiet, but everybody kind of had a right to know if their sovereign was doing well. So they actually had guys who would check him out, and then they would not really give a constipation proclamation, but they wouldn't keep it quiet. They would tell Cromwell, Wolsey when he was relevant. They would kind of keep the people who needed to be informed to run the government that, hey, the king is capable of running the government today.
I would assume that they would like have people in place to like tell lies about that. Like, oh no, the king's totally fine. Meanwhile, he's like in the bathroom puking his guts up.
Well, they did for a little while. Like
Okay.
when Henry VIII was married to Catherine Howard, there was a point where his ulcerated leg had closed over. So he had this big old ulcer on his leg from that joust in 1536. And it closed over, and it caused a ton of pain. His face actually became black because there was so much poison working the way into his system. And he didn't want Catherine Howard to know. He didn't want his hot 17-year-old smoking hot wife to know that he was a disgusting old man who had a pussy leg.
That was gonna clue her into that he's a disgusting old man.
Yes, not the fact that she had to sleep with him when he was double her age and the size of the bed, but he didn't want her to know, so they did keep it from her, and she actually was really worried that he was making plans to put her aside and sleep and get back together with Anne of Cleves. But so sometimes there were people who would kind of bullshit their way about how healthy he was. They would do usually for political purposes, but still it always kind of came out that he was not pooping that day. So this is why I brought this up. So the groom of the stool, they had the most private time with the king of anybody. If you think about it, how often do you poo?
Don't get this more private than anything.
Yeah, how
Now,
often?
now the question is, does that guy have to sit in the
He's in the
area
closet
with
with him, yep.
or is he like outside the door and the king's like, okay, I'm
Nope.
ready.
He's in the closet with it. So it's called a privy
White mate.
closet. It's called a stool closet. And the toilets, essentially the stools, they were pewter. Okay, so they were like really fucking nice, and they had indoor plumbing. So they had like a wood stool, but it would be covered in like velvet, which is disgusting. So, but and then they'd have like a pewter bowl or something, and like Henry's stool closets had like fucking libraries built into them, like walls of books.
Well, you need reading material while you're
Yeah,
going.
exactly.
Especially if you're constipated and
Yeah.
you're in there for like an hour. You're like, fuck.
He's got
He
like the
didn't have his
bathroom
iPhone to
reader in
play.
there, just like with funny little jokes and brain teasers.
Yeah, Henry VIII didn't have his iPhone to play any ye old Angry Birds.
You old play lady.
I mean, he was
Henry
a king,
VIII
so he
fact,
would just grab
Henry-
a slingshot and put a little tiny bird in it.
Henry VIII invented Playboy.
Yeah.
That's your Henry VIII fact for the day. So the groom of the stool was actually one of the most sought after position. It was because you got the most private time with the king.
It was
And-
most sought out position, but also the least favorite position to be in.
So the guy would have other jobs
yes,
too. So not only would he wipe the king's ass, but he would also deliver personal messages for the king. So, for example, William Compton was the king's groom of the stool in the beginning part of his reign, and William Compton was in charge of taking messages to one of Henry's first mistresses, Anne Hastings. So he was like taking a dump, and the king's like, also remind me to send my mistress a present.
Well, I'm on the crapper. Let me think of my wife.
No, not my wife.
I hate her.
No, it was Catherine of Aragon, and she was pregnant, so he couldn't sleep with her. He didn't hate her.
So you just poop a lot?
What does that have to do with it?
I don't know. That's what it made it sound like.
No.
Like there's some correlation there.
There's
I'm not
no
getting laid, so I'll
correlation.
just poop a lot.
No, he's not getting laid, so he sleeps with a mistress. That's
Is that why you're in the bathroom all the time, Jeff?
no comment. So the groom of the stool had a special uniform. He was really privileged. He would go and fetch shit for the king, not real shit. Not what's the opposite of literal? Theoretical.
Figurative.
He would fetch figurative shit for the king. He would carry his stuff for him. He would be in charge of dressing and undressing him. And he was also in charge of his shirts, which sounds weird, but shirts were one of the most intimate pieces. It's like the equivalent of a G-string. It's a super intimate piece of your clothing because it was worn underneath everything. It was the only piece that touched your body.
His old lingerie.
So he was in charge of his shirts. And it was a really, really honorable position. So besides that, though, the privy chamber guys, they were also his best buddies. They participated in sports and drinking with him and, wenching, bowling,
Yeah.
archery,
Classics.
all that stuff.
Bro shit.
Bro shit. They would
Dude.
Deuterino. Then there were also 4 esquires of the body. So they were trained knights who would watch over the king. They would help him get dressed, and they would also let the Lord Chamberlain know if there was anything missing. So if not missing as in stolen, and missing as in, hey, the king wanted that doublet today. Could you go fetch it? It was very structured, though. Like everybody had their roles within the chamber. So they also kind of knew a ton of Henry VIII's secrets, of course. Best buds, remember? Thomas Boleyn was actually one of these esquires of the body. They were also considered the masters of ceremony, and that's if you think about ceremony as like first you have to do this, then you have to do this, then like when you're meeting the Queen of England, there's a ceremony to it. Like you go in and you curtsy or you bow, and then I don't know, you walk backwards and clap like 10 times and quack like a duck. I don't know. Clearly, I've never been to England or met the Queen. But they did have to know all of the customs and the ceremonies around the king. They would guard the door, watch over valuables, and they were also in charge of the younger servants.
Oh, okay.
So it was a pretty good spot. So the grooms of the Privy Chamber consisted of 4 pages of honor, 6 gentlemen waiters, 3 cupbearers. We talked about those before.
Is that what Belen was?
Good job.
Because I just remember the meme I made.
Yes,
What's
I
my
remember
job,
that
sir?
too.
You fetch me cups. Oh God.
There were 3 carvers, 2 surveyors, and 3 sewers.
A lot of people.
Lots of fucking people. And then there was just like the staff. So each royal residence actually had their own permanent staff. So instead of the staff going with Henry wherever he went, there was 1 staff per residence. So as soon as Henry vacated a palace or a castle or manor or wherever he was staying, they would kind of scrub it top to bottom. And they did a good job too. It wasn't just like, lazy scrubbing. They would like wash the ceiling. Not kidding. They were pretty good about it. So like I said before, everybody kind of had their roles, and it was like down to the most minute stuff. So there was a role called the yeoman of the wardrobe yeoman of the wardrobe of the robes. And that person would give the groom the clothes that would be then given to the esquires. So the yeoman of the wardrobe of the robe would never just walk up to Henry and be like, here's your shirt. They would give it to one person who would give it to another person who would give it to another person who would then dress the king.
He doesn't like directly being handed things.
No, he's Tony Stark. And they also kept the clothes clean. They inventoried them. And one of the really cool things, so you guys have seen the Tudor paintings, right?
Yeah.
You know how the clothes are super fucking detailed? And you're like, I've often wondered, why are the clothes so beautifully detailed, but the people look like shit in these pictures? I can tell you why. It is because when a painter was painting somebody, they'd have the sitter there, and the sitter would have this outfit on and their jewelry on, and the painter would try as quickly as they could to catch the likeness of the person. So mostly they were probably just drawing the person while they were there and kind of roughing in the clothes and doing a few like fold of clothing here, fold of clothing there. This is where the necklace is. Then the yeoman of the wardrobe would actually, after the sitter had gone, provide the same clothes and jewelry to the painter so that he could paint those details without wasting the sitter's time.
Oh, wow.
I
Yeah.
never thought of that, but no, that's awesome that you brought that up. I never really thought about that.
It always bothered me whenever I was looking at a painting. I'm like, why is this clothing so beautifully? I mean, clearly the clothing is accurate and is amazingly detailed, and I never understood how they could capture that. And yet they're like, this might be Anne Boleyn, but we can't really tell because it's not really that great of a picture. So it's kind of amazing. I was really happy when I finally read about that. So
I'm imagining like a picture of Henry VIII where it's like really low detail, like stick figure type head, like very cartoony looking, but like beautiful clothing.
that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's not bad paintings. They're not terrible by any stretch of the imagination.
It's better than what I can do. Shit.
But it's still kind of frustrating when you're looking at a painting and they're like, we don't know who this is. We can't tell if this is the same person as this painting because they just look so different. So it's fascinating. I was really intrigued by that. So Henry also had a fuck ton of clothes. He was the one who started the sumptuary laws about what clothes certain people could wear and what others couldn't by law. And he had a shit ton of clothes. Even his father did. Like, everybody remembers Henry VII as a miser who like was like, don't touch my money. But he also understood the importance of kind of displaying wealth. So Henry VII had a decent amount of clothes, and there's actually a pattern. When Henry VII's reign was like kind of threatened, like with Perkin Warbeck and stuff, his spending on clothes went way up. And Henry VIII loved his clothes. He loved showing off his clothes and having giant cod pieces and showing off his legs with his awesome stockings and all that stuff. So he had special servants just for his clothes. So he had a tailor, an embroiderer, a hosier, and a Skinner, and those were suppliers of furs, and they all made his clothes. And before you ask, I think a hosier is the guy who makes the hose, which are like the stockings. Not
I think that's what
a
a Canadian calls.
not
somebody.
a Canadian. Yoga hosiers.
Oh God.
It's yoga hosers. Just kidding.
What
And
a
then there was
hosier.
also the cordwainer, the cutler, the milliner, and the silk woman, and they were all in charge of crafting his accessories. So,
I wonder how long it would take for them to pull together an outfit.
like, I mean, an outfit probably pretty easily, but to create clothes, if that's what you're asking,
That's what I mean. That's what I'm getting at. Like
I
that would be the reality show I'd watch, where like 6 teams of people try to pull together an outfit from scratch for King Henry VIII.
can't even imagine. Like, think about how the way clothes are made. Like, the shirts you're wearing are from tiny pieces of thread that are woven together.
Right.
Imagine
Nuts.
that without any sort of machines. It's insane to think about, which explains
Well,
why
they
stuff
probably
like
had
silk.
like what was it? What is it? A loom?
Yeah,
Yeah, they probably had some sort of like.
yeah, but it's still manual labor.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's not nearly as easy what it is now, but like.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know.
to me, it's always the creating the fabric that baffles me. Like,
Yeah.
my mom makes clothes and my little sister makes clothes, and I've been able to make some stuff. So I can imagine the actual sewing of stuff. It would be kind of painful because you'd be doing it by hand, but also I can picture doing and I can see how it's done. It's just really time consuming. The making of the fabric is what baffles me.
Yeah, that's the part. Especially when you see how intricate a lot of those things
Yeah,
you
like
see.
brocade fabric was a very popular fabric then. Right now, so you guys probably don't know what brocade is. You know when you go into a really fancy house and they have really heavy curtains that have textured patterns to it?
Yeah.
That's usually
Yeah.
brocade.
Jeez.
Where it's kind of silky feeling, but then there's a little bit of like maybe velvet, I don't know, fleur-de-lis or whatever on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually a brocade. And that's what a lot of Henry VIII's clothes were made of.
Now, would it be like a group of people working on a piece of fabric, or would it be
Yes.
like one person just like, I'm the one in charge of getting all the fibers
I'm
down?
sure it would be the latter, but don't quote me on that. Also, I'm saying brocade. That's the modern day equivalent of what it would be. But think about how detailed that is. That's what I'm trying to allude to, is the detail in brocade, not necessarily. And like velvet, I don't even. I fucked if I know how they make velvet. And then silk and wool and linen. It's just insane the many different types of fabrics they had back then.
Mm-hmm.
It baffles my mind. So anyway, of all those last people who I mentioned, the cordwainer, the cutler, the milliner, and the silk worker. The silk worker was one of the few roles a woman could have, and it was kind of cool because it allowed her to trade in her own rights and then also hire apprentices. So kind of a decent amount of freedom for a woman back then. She made ribbons, braids, and trimmings, and she also laundered and starched some of his clothes and mended sleeves, partlets, and veils. So she had a pretty cool job. Then it gets to like kind of the everyday care of Henry. So he'd wake up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy, brush his teeth with a bottle of Jack. Fuck, that song is old.
Yep.
It really is.
Date yourself.
I know. I didn't even like that song when it was out. So he'd wake up in the morning. His privy chamber guys would get him dressed. They'd hand shit to other people who handed shit to other people who then dressed the king. So he'd be all dressed, and then they would call in the barber surgeon.
Would the king bathe himself, or would he have people bathe him?
Actually, they didn't bathe very often because they believed that...
Oh, that's right.
So it's weird because we think of them as dirty because they're not bathing. First of all, we overbathe in today's society. If you don't wash your hair for 2 days, it looks greasy as fuck. But that's because our scalps are used to not producing or to producing tons of oil that we strip with shampoo every 2 days. If you actually go a couple of weeks without washing your hair, your body will naturally stop producing as much oil so your hair won't actually look as dirty as you think it is. Also, in those days, they believed that hot water opened the pores, and that allowed bacteria in. So they would then actually, we talked about this in one of the episodes, they kept linen to keep themselves clean. So all of their underclothes were linen, and it would kind of absorb the nastiness of the day. So, tons of armpit stains and whatnot, but they would I read in this book that they would change those elements like 2 times a day. If you were wealthy, you'd change your underlinen twice a day. So you were cleanish. And then Henry would bathe. Occasionally he would bathe. And he actually put on a special shirt to bathe in. They didn't just hop in a bathtub naked. But he did have people, scrubbing him down.
Okay.
So,
just use a rag on a stick.
burped. So he had a barber surgeon, and it actually was first a barber, and then it evolved to the barber surgeon.
Well, you already got a knife set. Might as well use it.
Well, the book I'm reading kind of explains it so that it makes sense. If you think about it, the barber is there every day, and they're the person, not only is he cutting your hair and trimming your beard, but he's also cleaning your teeth and making sure you don't have like gross shit in your ears. And
because barbers used to be dentists, didn't they? Or like that was a thing.
Barbers used to be kind of a little bit of everything.
Barber surgeons were kind of everything. So
okay. I've always heard as barbers and dentists, but never thought of a surgeon too. But that makes sense.
I mean, they would also pull your teeth. Yes. So they were in charge of washing, like cleaning Henry's teeth. He had fucking gold picks, and he has there's a little container left, and he had gold-plated picks to pick his teeth. He would scrub his teeth. If he needed one pulled, he would pull it. So this barber surgeon actually was super, super close, and he knew a lot about the king's health. So it evolved from the barber to the barber surgeon during Henry VIII's time.
Barber surgeon sounds like you're saying like Barbara surgeon, like it's a actress surgeon, or something.
Yes, she is the acclaimed 60s actress who is in a lot of musicals, and she was known for her big hair.
Mm-hmm.
So he also had 4 physicians, royal apothecaries, and personal surgeons. So he had a bevy of people around him to take care of his health, which, as I said before, it makes sense. Got to make sure the king's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
These were also the people that would give him his enemas when he was constipated.
They did that?
Yes, they did. The book went into detail about what an enema involved back then.
Okay, what did an enema involve back then?
I didn't write it down, but if my memory serves me,
they just squirt some water up his butthole and call it a day.
It was like almost like a balloon. So it would have been a bladder, like an animal bladder, filled with an herb water mixture that was put up his butt, and then after 2 hours they would take it out, and then he could poop. But usually after a couple hours. So he'd go to bed, and then at like 2 a.m. wake up and release unholy hell. So, but they did do enemas. It's very
the privy chamber guy is like, you know what? This is the worst one.
The enema of my enema is my friend.
I thought burrito night was my least favorite. It's enema night.
So like I said earlier, Henry got constipated, so they gave him these enemas. He also developed hemorrhoids from it. So Henry VIII just was not having a good time when he couldn't poop. Neither was the groom of the stool.
He was out of a job.
Sorry, Compton,
Man,
take a week
cushy
off.
Gig there, Greg. Yeah, King won't shit no more.
It's like when construction workers are like, there's been no jobs out lately. It's like, I have nothing to build. I have no shit to wipe. I don't know what else to do.
He's in the line for the soup kitchen because the king can't shit. Oh my god.
So, like I said, they would kind of have this ceremony around everything they did. So when the king wanted to eat, he wouldn't really host these big glorious feasts all the time. He would a lot of times have a private dinner with either just himself or with his wife, whoever that may be at the time. So the gentleman would set the table, and it was before Henry got there. Every time they placed something down, they had to bow to the spot that Henry would sit in. It was really extreme. But beneath, so in a palace, they would actually have about 3 kitchens. There would be the main kitchen, and that would serve the court as a whole. Then the king would have a privy kitchen and the queen would have a privy kitchen. And those were usually situated right beneath their apartments so that they could get hot food instantly. They didn't have to have some poor servant running across the hall trying to serve them some hot eggs.
Now, would the servants get to eat as good as like the king and everyone else, or would they kind of get like, just scraps and shit?
They would not get scraps. Servants were actually
not
treated.
Scraps, no.
They were treated really well. They were given rations. They probably weren't eating the red
rations?
meats.
Rations.
Ration?
Yes.
Rations.
Yeah, rations.
What did I say?
You said rations.
Sorry, I'm a hillbilly. They would have rations.
You guys got some rations?
Can you edit that out for me?
No.
Thank you.
Rations al Ghul.
Somebody's going to leave us a bad review about that. So they would get rations throughout the day. Actually, I'm getting to this one This one role in the kitchen was somebody called a turnspit, and they would literally stand in front of the fire all fucking day, just turning rods with chickens and geese and all that kind of stuff that need to be roasted all day.
He's like, man, I wish something was invented to keep this going without having a person here.
They did invent it. They made like a little hamster wheel and they trained a dog to run on it. But before it was a dog, it was a person, and they got a gallon of beer a day on top of food. But that's not bad. That's not bad.
I thought you were saying that, like they just hung a thing of beer in front of them.
They have the little hamster. They have the little hamster.
I want
thing.
it. Almost there.
So, yeah, they definitely got some food, and the leftover food. Think about this. When Henry VIII sits down to lunch, he doesn't sit down and order a ham sandwich. He sits down and they bring out 6 or 7 different courses, all of which consisted of like 10 different dishes. And he would pick and choose from those. And then everybody else would get what was not chosen. And then it would kind of trickle down the line. So
that's what I assumed it would be.
That's the way it works. And then at the end of the day, the poor people who would gather outside the palaces, they would be given the scraps.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
I mean, at least they were getting fed.
Yes. Yeah. And honestly, he could have tossed it. Mm-hmm. So he had his cooks, and he had a private cook, and there was a clerk, and he was the most senior person in the kitchen. He would make sure everybody had what they needed. Ingredients weren't going missing. People weren't filching or stealing shit, all that stuff. Then there was the master cook, and he was in charge of overall cooking. There were about 3 of those, one for the main kitchen, one for the king, and one for the queen. Henry loved one of his main cooks. His name was Pierre Ledoux, who's French. And he would reward him with clothes, which if you think about it, think about how much those clothes cost. So he was giving away clothes as rewards to the servants. And then there was Mrs. Cornwallis, and she worked in the confectionery. She made all of Henry's sweets. He liked her so much, he gave her a whole fucking house.
Oh, shit.
Right?
Damn good pies.
Damn good coffee. And then there was the turnspit I talked about. So those were just a couple of the roles in the kitchen that they had. The laundress was a really important role in the palace. There were obviously a couple of them, not just one woman doing all of everybody's clothing. Most of the washing was done outside, except for the intimate items like the shirts. Those were washed in a private place. But because so many articles were washed outside where water was everywhere, they don't find really much evidence of this in Tudor remains of Tudor houses. Mm-hmm. So not much on that. So I actually went into detail on making the bed because I thought it was hilariously detailed. So this is what happens when Henry VIII wakes up. Well, no, I'm going to say when he goes to sleep. So Henry VIII wakes up and everybody gets the groom collects the linen, the pillows, and the blankets, and he makes sure they're off to laundered, and then before Henry comes to bed, he makes sure they're warm. So
just hose off the bed when he's done with it.
So there are 8 yeomen and there would be 4 on either side of the bed.
I think that's yeoman, by the way.
I Googled it.
Yo, man.
I Googled it to make sure I was saying
Okay.
it right, because I knew if I said it one way, I'd be told another, and whatever. It's spelled Yeoman or Men if it's plural. So
Yao Ming.
It's Yao Ming. So there are 8 yeomen of the that would be on either side of the bed. An usher would check under the bed for assassins, while a yeoman would stab into the straw bottom of the mattress to make sure that there was nobody hiding.
No.
Yeah.
I want that job. I wish that was my job.
I just want
What do
to.
you-
I
what
want to
do
be
you
the
do for a
mattress
living?
stabber.
I stab the king's bed to make sure there's no ninja assassins hiding under there.
The usher would also make sure that the king had a sword within easy reach overnight. So if somebody came in, the king could defend himself.
Like the baseball bat leaning up in the corner.
Yes. Then a canvas cover was placed on the mattress, and then a down cover. A yeoman would roll up and down on the mattress to make sure that no weapons were hidden inside. Then they made the bed.
He would roll on the bed.
Up and down the bed.
Oh my god.
What's your job? I roll.
These
on the
guys
bed.
had the best job.
They do, don't they?
100%. They just get to fuck around in the king's room. Like,
So this is-
let's stab the bed. Now let's roll around for a while.
This sounds no different than my normal night.
This is a every night occurrence
Yeah,
in the
I like to
Simpson
stab
household.
my bed and roll around it, make sure it's all safe.
Then they actually made the bed. Now that it was safe of weapons and assassins, they would make
And
it.
ninjas.
So they'd have a linen sheet, then blankets, then a counterpoint, then a bolster, and then pillows.
And then Henry would go to bed, and
No.
each one of them would kiss him on the cheek and say, "Good night, Henry. Good night, Henry."
Is there like a warm
all-
glass of milk and some Oreos?
They would all sing Skinnamarink Rinky Dink to the king.
Waffle makes whale noises.
long, farewell.
What song were you? Is that the song you were sung goodnight, Garrett? So long, farewell.
No, what was I sung at night?
I was sung Skinnamarink Rinky Dink. Skinnamarink Rinky Dink, Skinnamarink Doo. I love
you.
I love you in the morning and in the afternoon. I love you in the evening and underneath the moon. Skinnamarink Rinky Dink, Skinnamarink Doo. I love you.
Man, no one ever sang to me when I was a kid.
My dad used to sing that to me. You know,
No, I think the bedtime ritual is my mom.
They just
would
lock the
read me,
door and turn off
what's
all the
that
lights
one
on me.
About growing up.
don't bother us till morning, you little shit.
Lights
What
out.
is that book?
Anyway, then all
I love
of the,
you forever, my baby you'll be. That's the one. Remember that book?
Yes.
Oh my god, what a fucking tearjerker.
Yeah, that one is a good one. I
Oh.
love you forever. I'll like you for always.
Don't know what that is.
There's an episode of Friends where they do the whole thing. It's a funny
Hence why I don't know
episode.
it.
It's not known from Friends. It's a classic children's book. It's almost like Goodnight Moon classic. You had no
It's
childhood.
as much of a classic as Goodnight Moon, and there's a monster at the end of this book.
Yes.
God, that's so
Anyway, so once the bed was made, all of the guys except for the groom would leave. The groom would kneel by the bed until the king went to bed. He would just stay there guarding, making sure no rogue assassins slipped between
One of your
the
men is just
sheets.
hired to sit there and watch you sleep.
good. I mean, the
Gets
best
better.
thing to do
It gets better.
Was
to
part of
stop
the interview
assass-
process, they're like ask you like, all right, we just want to listen to you breathe for for a minute. How loud do you breathe?
I think the best thing
You're
to do
fired.
to catch the assassins would be to sleep under the bed where the assassins would stay.
Oh no! Do you
Like,
want to
there's
know
a
where
guy
this
that's
guy
just
slept?
always underneath the king's bed.
Guys, he slept on the king's bed.
With the king?
It's the king.
My job. I
He
sleep with
would-
the king.
Wait. Gets better. If he wasn't sleeping in the bed with the king, he would sleep on a pallet at the foot of the bed like a fucking dog.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I don't want that job because I imagine the king would just like fart a lot in his sleep and like just be really gross.
Do you imagine the king had like sleep apnea? So like every time he stopped breathing, the guy's like, oh shit. Oh, thank God. Oh, thank
Would
God.
anybody stay in the room if the king was having marital relations?
No, they would take him to. They would never sleep in the king's room. The king would always go to the queen's room, and he would
Okay.
go. He would go, boink her, and then come back to bed.
Would anybody like stand guard
win-
outside the door?
What'd you say?
Would they have like people stand guard outside the door to like make sure no assassins
They
come
did.
in?
Yes, they did.
as he's coming in?
Gross.
Wah wah.
Take that back. This is a PG show, Jeff.
Fuck yeah.
God damn it.
Watch my language. You got to be shitting me.
So it's easy to think of like the servants as like, oh, the lowly servants, they were always ignored. Nobody gave a shit about them. It wasn't quite like that in the Tudor times. Henry VIII actually gambled with, there's records of him gambling with the sergeant of the cellar. And the
I thought
below
you said he was gambling with, like, he was using them as the bet.
I will trade you my yeoman of the guard for your master of wine.
Gotta collect them all.
No, they would gamble together. So the below-stairs staff actually was regularly noticed by the king and his family, and they would chat with them, give them gifts, honor them, play games and pastimes with them, that kind of stuff. So they were fairly well treated. In fact, they were probably better treated than people are today, because the size of a household was never reduced. No matter how tight things were financially, you had to maintain a nice household. You were the fucking king. So you were never going to lose your job because of downsizing. The servants usually had their jobs for life, and they would even be able to secure jobs for their children and their family members. So Henry VII had an employee who worked for both him and Henry VIII, and then when that employee died, that guy's kids worked for Henry VIII. So it's real good job security. If they were ill, if they fell ill temporarily, they had their board and wages paid completely. They were supported during long-term illnesses and old age, and promotion was like rampant. They had no problem promoting people if they were doing a good job. So it wasn't a bad deal to be a servant of a royal family in the Tudors.
You just hear the name servant, you assume like, oh, they're like
Yeah.
a slave. Like, no, they were actually like an employee.
Yeah. So I did want to touch a little bit on someone who is kind of a servant, but not really. It was the court fool. So Henry VIII had one named Will Somers, and this it's kind of sad, but also a little bit better than things would have been. A court fool was not just a man who was very witty and good at making jokes. A fool was usually somebody with learning disabilities.
Oh,
Oh,
It's sad.
I don't like that at all.
Okay, but it's not bad, because before 1511, people with mental disabilities were seen as sinful. They were cast out, they were shunned, they were not treated well, they were abused. Then in 1511, somebody wrote a book talking about how St. Paul saw those of those with learning disabilities. They were actually closer to God because some complicated reasons. But that book kind of changed the view, so people saw fools as like holy almost. So yes, he was
Weird.
hired in something that we would see as embarrassing,
yeah.
but he was hired and not stoned to death.
Or
And that's
shunned from
something-
society. Okay.
Yeah. So the jesters basically were able to say whatever they wanted, and they were well loved. Actually, there's a family portrait of Henry VIII, and his jester is in the background of it. Not just the background, like I mean, like there's the family, and then there's like a handful of people on either side, and Will Somers is one of them. So
I would like to see that.
I gotta find it. I'll find it and share it.
I'll look it up. But anyway.
So I'm going to end it with Wolsey and his Eltham ordinances. So Wolsey was not fond of all of the people around Henry VIII being able to whisper into his ear and be like, hey, I've got a family member who really needs a job, and could you do me a favor? As they're wiping his ass. So Wolsey instituted the Eltham ordinances, and he really just wanted to secure his power over Henry. And it drastically lowered the number of people in the Privy Chamber. So it made the groom of the stool still super important. He was the sole servant of the king's allowed in his bedchamber, and none of the other privy guys were allowed to enter the bedchamber. Then on top of that, only gentlemen of the privy chamber were allowed to enter the privy room. So there was no more of this like, hey, Henry, this is my brother Bob. I'm gonna bring him in here just to chill with us for the day. No more of that. But it reduced the number of men from 50 to 15 officers. And part of those changes was that they weren't allowed to ask for any favors. No more favors. Basically, start being more respectful of the king and blah, blah, blah. Wolsey did it in an attempt to try and secure his power over Henry. It did not work. But it still reduced that number. That is it for my episode of The Servants.
Huh.
That was a really good one. I see when it comes to things like this, I really like to know like the little things that people don't think of, like
Yeah, me too.
like this, like, well, somebody must have been doing this. What was that like? Or like, who would have
Yeah.
done this? Or like things like that, like the
That's
little
a-
that's things, and that's
like
so
why I
cool
wanna
to think
go-
and learn about.
Yeah, it's why I'd love to time travel. I love the idea of being able to see those little things that nobody really thinks to ask about.
Yeah.
See,
So-
when you first said you're going to talk about servants, honestly, what came to my first mind was whenever you watch Downton Abbey, and you see the whole like slew
Upstairs,
of
downstairs
you see
thing.
the whole people down in the kitchen prepping all this stuff.
It's not quite like that. No, they had a pretty intertwined life, and everybody was a servant of the king. It didn't matter if you were
Oh,
a
yeah.
baron or whatever. You were still serving the king. So, yeah, I thought it was really interesting. So I was debating between covering that and covering how Henry VIII kind of brought the Renaissance to England. And I think I'm going to talk about that next week. The book I'm reading talks about it a lot. And so I want to talk about that because I know we've covered things like music and art, but I really want to talk about how, like, we think of the Renaissance and how it came to England and what Henry did to encourage that kind of learning and stuff, because there's a big difference between his father's court and his court. So I think we'll talk about that next time,
Cool.
if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah, I'm
sure,
fine.
whatever.
Cool.
All right.
Any questions?
No, I think I got it.
You done been
Yeah.
educated.
Thank you, Em.
So you're welcome. So find us on Facebook at Tudor I Hardly Know Her. Find us on Twitter at Tudor Know Her. Rate and review us, and please subscribe. Subscribing is helpful because it means that if there's ever a weird issue like we've encountered twice before where you can't get the episode, it doesn't affect the people who are subscribed to it. So if you subscribe, you're going to get the episodes no matter what. And then rate and review us because it makes us feel good about ourselves, but also it helps other people find our podcast, and it helps them determine from the start whether they're going to like it, because we know our format is not for everybody. I know some people want a really, strict historical view of
Clean-cut,
it.
historian
Our reviews,
based one.
yeah, our reviews are helpful to show that we are armchair historians. We've said it many times, but nobody really pays attention to that apparently. So review us, tell people what you like, what they would like, why you like it, all that stuff, and it'll help others, and also it'll attract more like-minded people. It's really cool to have this group of awesome people who are super into Tudor history and also like it that we're just a big group of friends.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Emily.
You're welcome. So
And,
until
I
next time.
guess until next time.
Yep.
Until next time.
Divorce.
Beheaded, died. Divorced,
Divorced,
beheaded,
died.
survived.
Divorced, beheaded, survived. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye now. Bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye.
Goodbye.